Welcome back, and this is going to build upon the previous video where we discussed the master grip with your dominant side hand, and now we're going to acquire a two-handed grip. We always want to have two hands on the pistol whenever possible because that allows us much greater stability and control, especially for that final point of performance of follow-through. The flatter we can get the gun to shoot, then the easier it is for us to reacquire the sights for that follow-up shot. All right, let's get into it. In the previous video on how to achieve the master grip, I described the steps of initially forming a U with the web of your strong side hand and then firmly pressing the back strap or the beaver tail of the gun into the web of the hand, ensuring it is nice and firm and as high as possible on the back strap or up into the beaver tail. Next, we're going to take the middle segments of the middle and ring finger, placing them on the front strap of the gun and putting flat pressure, directing that pressure through the grip of the gun towards the web of the hand, which will effectively cement or keep that web where it needs to be. We are not using the pinky finger. For the full description of why, check the link down below. It'll take you to the deep dive of the master grip. For now, just suffice it to say, we're going to rest the pinky on the grip, but we're not going to squeeze as part of our grip pressures. We also discussed trigger finger placement being high on the frame or high indexed up on the slide. We want to make sure that that finger is never introduced near the trigger until we are presenting the gun from position 3 and we are in motion out to position 4. Then it is okay to apply pressure to the trigger, take up the slack, and once the sights are on target appropriately, then we smoothly finish up the shot. For the purposes of this video, we're establishing a two-handed grip. So we want to take the dominant side thumb and we're going to flag it upward, which then in effect makes plenty of space on the side panel of the grip to place our support side hand. So this is how we establish the master grip. Now we're going to dig into the nuances of the support side hand and its role in the two-handed grip. When I'm teaching this to students, I will have them start out by pointing their support side thumb at the target. Now this is not just a thumbs forward type approach. I want that wrist to be aggressively locked out. What you'll notice is that when you do this, your support side fingers will be angled downward at about a 45-degree angle. Whenever possible, I would encourage the student to lock out the elbows. Now there's different views on this. If you have a pre-existing condition and you cannot lock out the elbows, or your current technique is to maintain a little bit of bend in the elbows and you're using muscular tension to absorb the recoil, if that's working for you, then that is fine. When I'm teaching somebody this, especially at the foundational level, I will have them lock out the elbows if possible because this adds extra support. Effectively, what this will do is you will have wrist tension. You'll twist the radius and ulna, the two bones in the forearm. It will stack them on top of each other for better skeletal support. And just as importantly, it will preload the common extensor tendon with tension. This is important because we want the gun to shoot as flat as possible. If you have any flex in your wrist, then what will happen is the front of the gun or the front sight is going to buck wildly, and then it's going to require you to use muscle influence to level the gun back out for that next shot. So effectively, by locking out your wrist and your elbow using body mechanics in your favor, what you're doing is enabling the gun to gently bounce as such, keeping your front and rear sights generally in line, or if you're using a red dot type optic, it will keep the red dot in the window that you're looking through. That way, it enables you to, as soon as your sights or your dot rest back on your desired point of aim, the trigger's already prepped and you're ready to smoothly send that next round down range. Now that we have a general understanding of the mechanics involved of why we want that wrist and the elbow locked out, now let's discuss the pressure points or where we want that support side hand to fit onto the support side of the gun. We're going to start out with an isolation type drill where we focus solely on the placement of the support side hand, identify what I refer to as landmarks so that when we later place it into the strong side hand for that master grip, we have a solid start point for any micro adjustments after that. So the primary part of your support side hand that I want you to be applying pressure to the grip panel of the gun is this meaty portion, this muscle at the base of the thumb. This is what I want to have aggressively placed onto the side of the gun, and it's going to be pressing firmly, as much skin in the game as possible, applying as much friction as you can against the side of the gun. Now, as far as placement goes, if you have a little divot somewhere towards the top end of the grip panel, then that's a good start point. That's your reference of where to begin perfecting how you're going to put that muscle that's at the base of the thumb up against the side of the gun. So when working with students, I will have them point that support side thumb at the target, locking out that wrist and elbow, and then I will place the gun so that the muscle at the base of the thumb is pressed firmly about where that divot is on the side of the gun. If it has one, I want to get the support side hand as high up onto the frame of the gun as possible. The concept here is the higher your support side grip is to the bore axis of the gun, then the better you'll be able to mitigate the muzzle flip. That energy from the gun trying to cycle and then buck up like this, you'll be able to override that because you have better leverage on the gun. Now, you don't want it too high. If your hand is riding on the slide itself, then you're going to press too much friction into it and you may induce a malfunction. And you also need to be mindful that if your slide lock lever is a bit pronounced, then having pressure against that may override the spring in it. It's a very itty bitty baby spring, and it doesn't take much pressure against the slide lock lever to inhibit it from locking the slide open when your magazine goes dry. If you notice that your slide is failing to lock open on that empty magazine, then you want to adjust your grip just an itty bit lower until it alleviates that issue. So, thumb pointed forward, wrist locked, fingers down at a 45. Place the support side hand firmly and flat against the grip of the gun, and then wrapping the support side fingers up at about a 45-degree angle on the strong side of the gun. Now, right now, the student does not have their strong side hand on the gun. What we're looking for here is what I refer to as landmarks. I don't want the student to have a master grip with their dominant hand and then have to play around with it and figure out what feels right. So to identify the landmarks, I'll have the student relax the elbow, bring the gun inward so that they can look at the support side of the gun. We're going to find some type of landmarks. To illustrate some of my landmarks on this particular gun, you'll note that my thumbnail is resting on the frame at about where the 4th or 5th serration on the slide is. The first joint of that thumb is about equal to where the ejection port is, and the meaty portion at the base of my thumb is resting just below where the slide lock lever is. Once you have those landmarks established, then we're going to take and transfer the gun back into the dominant side hand, making that U in the web, pressing the gun firmly up into the web of the hand, locking it in with the middle and ring finger. Pinky just relaxes. The strong side thumb needs to flag upward, and then I'm going to lock out that wrist and then place the support hand firmly on the gun. Think of it as a puzzle piece. We want to make sure there's no air gap between the strong and support hands, and then wrap those support side fingers up at a 45-degree angle, locking those fingers in generally in the grooves or the valleys of your strong side hand. At this point, we can make micro adjustments. We're going to tweak the support side hand's placement, and you'll see that it is just about the same as those landmarks. So by finding those landmarks early on, now you have something that's repeatable every time that you put your support side hand on the gun. You have a logical start point, and you can just make minor tweaks until you find what you can apply consistently and intuitively every single time you acquire the grip. So we're going to lock out that support side wrist. Our dominant side thumb needs to flag upward to make room on the grip for the support side hand. We use those landmarks, and we're going to firmly place the support side hand, fitting it like a puzzle piece in with the dominant side hand, and then we're going to wrap those support side fingers upward at about a 45-degree angle, locking them into the natural valleys or grooves of your strong side fingers. So the next critical concept we want to go over is that we're not only putting pressure here onto the side panel of the gun, we also want to eliminate any air gap, or as much of an air gap as possible, between the flesh of your support hand and the grip of the gun. You don't want a big air pocket in there, because then you have less friction points to maintain control of the gun during recoil. Now note that all of the fingers of the support side hand need to be underneath the trigger guard. If your trigger guard has a flat knurled portion in the front, you may have the inclination of putting your support index finger there. If you do this, then what will tend to happen is you will no longer have the lock in your wrist. Now you have some flex, so that when the gun recoils, you'll have extra muzzle flip, and you have to use muscle strength to realign the sights before taking your follow-up shot. So remember, these fingertips of your support hand are not just laying gently there. I want you to squeeze firmly with your support side fingers to help lock that all together. If you're noticing that your support side thumb tends to be falling below the gun a little bit during the cycle of fire, then in slow motion what you would likely notice is that that dominant side hand is coming out of the support hand. I want you to squeeze a little bit firmer with the support side fingers to help control that. Another technique that may be helpful is we're not just squeezing with the support side fingers to keep them together, but also rolling that support side forearm inward to apply a little bit more torque or pressure to the side panel of the gun. We're using the support side fingers as a control. We're digging in there, using that as our pivot point, and we're rolling that forearm, which applies more pressure and friction on the side of the gun. Now let's talk about placement of your thumbs and the appropriate amount of pressure there. For our support side thumb, it should be generally resting somewhere along the frame, not on the slide. I don't care if it's touching or resting on it, but I would encourage you not to dig in with your support side thumb. If you're digging into the frame or the slide with your support side thumb, then we're going to tend to influence the gun to the strong side. So if you're a right-handed shooter, you may actually be pushing your shots to the 3 o'clock. I don't want you to be digging in. I just want it to be resting there. Some people will advocate flagging the thumb up so it's not even touching the gun. If that works for you, then go ahead. But it's okay to have it touching the gun. I just don't want you digging in. So just like I don't want you digging in with your support side thumb, I also don't want you digging in with your strong side thumb. If we dig in with the strong side thumb on top of the support hand, what we tend to do is put a wonky influence on the rear of the gun and push the gun to the support side. So for a right-handed shooter, we tend to push the gun to the 9 o'clock. So be mindful of that as well. We're not digging in with the thumbs. We're acquiring that grip pressure on the strong side, primarily by squeezing with the middle and ring finger, keeping the web high into the backstrap of the gun. And with the support hand, we're primarily using the friction or pressure of this muscle at the base of your support side thumb, pressing firmly in a vice-type fashion into the side of the gun. Those are the primary pressure points to maintain that strong grip without influencing wonky pressures that are going to throw your point of impact off. And as already mentioned elsewhere, this needs to be a consistent grip strength. I don't want you to tighten up or adjust your grip as you're finishing off your trigger squeeze. That will add a wonky influence on the gun. Typically, if you tighten everything up, you're going to shank the shot to the 6 o'clock. So a common question that used to come up, how much grip pressure or strength with each hand? That's going to be different for each individual. If I ask you on a scale of 0 to 10 to measure your pain level, that is subjective based off of your experience or what you're feeling. That's not an objective standard. So what I'll tell you is the pressure or the strength with your strong side hand needs to be firm enough so that the web of the hand stays firmly cemented high into the backstrap of the gun. And remember, we achieve that by squeezing firmly with flat pressure on the front strap with our middle and ring finger, transferring that to the web of the hand to keep it locked tight there. For our support side hand, the role of the support side hand is to have that wrist locked to mitigate how much the muzzle flips, to try to keep the front and rear sight generally in line, or if you're shooting a red dot, to keep your red dot somewhere within that window, so as it gently jumps up and down, as soon as that dot or your sights are aligned on target, you're ready to smoothly finish off that next shot. Now, 2 quick notes: if you're shooting a subcompact style gun and you have large hands, make sure that your support side thumb is not pushing forward of the muzzle. I don't want you to shoot your thumb off. So you may need to further adjust and make tweaks to the grip if that is the case. The other thing is, again, make sure that all those fingers of your support side hand are coming underneath the trigger guard, wrapping firmly, applying pressure there. If your support side index finger is encroaching into the trigger guard, then you need to further adjust that as well. If your finger goes behind the trigger, it may inhibit the proper function of the trigger or pinch it. And for the love of God, you don't want to let it go forward of the trigger inside the trigger guard and then have a negligent discharge. So be mindful of the index finger placement of your support side hand on that grip. So to briefly recap, we're going to form a U with the web of the strong side hand, place the beaver tail or the back strap firmly up into the web of the hand, lock it in with the middle and ring fingers of the strong side hand, applying flat pressure straight through the grip to keep it into the web, and then we're going to just rest that pinky finger onto the side of the gun. We're going to flag that dominant side thumb up out of the way to open up grip panel space, lock out that support side wrist, use your landmarks, adjust as necessary, make sure that those support side fingers are all underneath the trigger guard. Now they'll be angled up at a 45-degree angle. We're going to squeeze firmly with these fingertips, pressing that muscle that's at the base of your support side thumb into the side panel of the grip. If you're having difficulty maintaining that support side hand on the gun during recoil, then consider rolling that support side forearm inward, which will apply greater pressure and friction on the side panel of the gun. So there you have it. That is how I teach students to achieve a solid two-handed grip that is consistent and repeatable so that you have a flatter recoil impulse, which enables a quicker follow-through shot when necessary. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them down below. Go ahead and share this with all those in your community. And until next time, God bless you and stay safe.